Tonight, Melbourne testing sites at breaking point with Omicron case numbers surging. Plus, the PM's COVID scare as Glenn McGrath tests positive just days out from the pink test. 3 people in hospital after their joyride turns to horror in Albert Park. The hunt for a hit-run driver who left a man for dead in Melbourne's north. Victorian holidaymakers caught up in a cyclone emergency in Queensland. And the 11th hour ultimatum for Novak Djokovic.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Jackie Felgate starts now.
Good evening. Victoria's health system is buckling under an Omicron surge with an extraordinary number of people falling ill with the virus. Most testing sites were closed today, putting added pressure on wait times as some patients claim they've been given incorrect results.
As many tried in vain to get tested, tensions ran high. Of the state's 223 listed testing sites, only a quarter were open this afternoon. 29 closed early because they were over capacity, the rest just shut for the weekend. In Victoria, 1 in 7 PCR tests is now coming back positive. But those figures are delayed by up to 4 days.
Last night we sent out about just under 200 SMSs to patients saying unfortunately their tests are going to be delayed.
Melbourne pathology under so much strain, tests are taking 100 hours to be processed. One came back negative last week, then suddenly a positive result came yesterday.
Really angry because I did the right thing, but if I didn't think twice, like I could have infected like the grandma, 35, 40 people at least that I would have infected.
Victoria has recorded 7,172 new cases. Our hospitalisations had been steady for a number of weeks, but that's slowly starting to change, increasing by 25% over the last week. In New South Wales, a much sharper increase, quadrupling in the last fortnight, jumping by 167 overnight.
It's a source of worry. With this particular wave, Melbourne appears to be 1 to 2 weeks behind Sydney in terms of the effects.
Around the world, a spike unlike any we've seen this whole pandemic. 1.6 million new cases recorded in a single day. While milder than other variants, the overall numbers are taking a toll.
It's not about COVID alone, but the health system and healthcare altogether being totally smashed and people not getting timely care.
The battle lines are principally in COVID wards and emergency departments. We are, I think, the healthcare workforce running on empty and there's not much petrol left in the tank.
All of our individual efforts are going towards taking the pressure off our hospital system because we need our hospital system to be available for the sickest Victorians.
With more than 30,000 active cases, much of the workload is falling to our GPs.
We do the most of the healthcare system, and it's sometimes frustrating to see only hospitals represented. And we know there are people out there who haven't been tested who are likely positive. We know they're seeking medical advice, and we're constantly doing that.
And that workload is about to intensify, with millions more Victorians becoming eligible for booster shots this week. Pharmacists have been stepping up, delivering more jabs over the Christmas period than any other part of the system.
We've got that big acceleration point coming on Tuesday. We've got kids coming online a week later on the 10th, and then of course the interval for boosters drops to 3 months on the 31st.
And they still can't get stock to meet the run on rapid antigen tests.
It will settle down, it will normalise, prices will drop, there'll be plenty of stock, but the next 2 weeks are going to be bumpy.
One lifelong pro-vaccine campaigner is amongst the fully jabbed with COVID after a trip to New York.
I shuddered to think how I would have behaved if I had not been triple vaccinated. I had 3 afternoons where I had zero choice. I had to lie down and I had zero strength.
At Christmas, less than 2% of our cases in Victoria were thought to be the Omicron variant. Today, it's a very different story. Recent sampling suggests it's up to 76% or 3/4 Omicron. And while testing delays mean we haven't got those results from New Year's Eve period, it's likely to go up even higher. There is many are hopeful that this highly infectious yet milder variant could be our ticket out of the pandemic. But there are plenty of hurdles we need to overcome before we get there. Jackie?
Yes, indeed. Christy Cooper reporting live. Thank you. The Prime Minister is monitoring for COVID symptoms after a positive case attended Kirribilli House. But Scott Morrison isn't required to isolate or get tested under the new pandemic guidelines. Cricket legend Glenn McGrath has tested positive to COVID and now risks missing the entire pink test in Sydney. He was expected to attend a function at the SCG tomorrow, but is now isolating for 7 days. Friday's third day is played in honour of McGrath's late wife Jane. COVID is also causing havoc with the Melbourne Stars. 3 more players have tested positive, taking the infected total to 10.
Panic Zoom meetings, a lot of PCR tests, rapid tests. My nostrils are that sore just from being jabbed and prodded. But glad that we can get a game of cricket on today, and that's the main thing.
The Underman Stars called in 6 local replacements for today's game against Perth, and we'll have more on the unfolding situation in sport. 3 people are in hospital tonight recovering from a dangerous morning joyride that came just centimetres from tragedy. The female driver lost control of the stolen car, crashing into a tree before it burst into flames.
A burning wreck on Lakeside Drive. The scorched remains of a joyride gone wrong.
We guess that some young people got onto the Grand Prix track and decided to test it out.
A man and 2 women were inside the stolen car when it crashed through bollards and hit a tree at Albert Park. Witnesses say they saw the car smoking before it ignited.
Suddenly, the car burst into flames.
Walkers at Albert Park Lake rushing to free the trio from the burning car.
We could hear someone screaming. It sounded like they were in agony. And by the time we got around here, they had 2 people actually being lifted onto stretchers.
Investigators believe the Holden Astra was taken from Mentone this morning. The road it crashed on had recently been resurfaced to create an ultra-fast track for the Grand Prix.
They turned one corner, but they didn't make the second corner, so they obviously were accelerating. They must have been travelling fast.
Tonight, the driver and their 2 passengers remain in hospital, being treated for injuries and bruising. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
A 7-year-old boy has drowned in a swimming tragedy near Orbost. Rescue divers recovered the boy's body this morning after he went missing while swimming at Jarramond just before 6 o'clock last night. A 35-year-old man also died today when he got into rough waters east of the mouth of the Gellibrand River in Princetown. To breaking news, and detectives have just made an arrest over an alleged hit-run in Melbourne's north. The victim is clinging to life tonight as police investigate whether he was deliberately struck while riding an electric scooter.
This is the moment a man on a motorised scooter is mowed down. The car drives a short distance, backs up, then speeds off.
Pretty awful situation to leave someone on the side of the road with those sorts of injuries.
The 45-year-old victim was thrown into the air, landing in a gutter and left for dead, until a passerby found him unconscious and called for help.
I feel sorry for the guy, that's all I can say. Poor thing.
Earlier, the driver of the Silver Commodore was reported driving erratically. He struck the victim near the bus stop on Campbell Street, then continued on about 150 metres to the cricket club. As he enters the car park, the scooter remains stuck under the car before it's eventually dislodged.
Seen some car go into the park, do a U-turn and drive off.
You hope that you're just going to be able to get your way back home safely and not be run down by someone who doesn't even have the decency to stop.
7 News understands police are now investigating whether the hit-run was deliberate. They're looking for clues in security vision, trying to piece together the moments leading up to the crash.
The car has travelled completely onto the wrong side of the road where it's actually driven up onto the concrete gutter.
The victim remains in an induced coma tonight, his family by his bedside hoping for a miracle.
The family also suffered another loss of a family member a week prior, so very, very distressing time for that family.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
Victorian holidaymakers in Queensland are bracing for a cyclone emergency, with beaches closed along the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. Cyclone Seth is tracking south as coastal communities are warned to prepare for severe weather conditions.
There will be significant surf on the coast, some damaging waves and some very high tides which will cause rips.
Cyclone Seth is a Category 1 but is forecast to weaken into a subtropical system sometime tomorrow. A teenager has been flown to the Alfred Hospital after jumping off a rock and landing face first in Blairgowrie. Ambulance Victoria says the boy is in a stable condition but will monitor his neck for damage. Federal opposition leader Anthony Albanese has toured a key battleground, making a bold election promise. But his plans for a high-speed rail link have been slammed for lacking detail.
Just 2 days into the new year, Anthony Albanese hopes to start 2022 on the right track.
Now is the time for sharing resolutions.
Wasting no time in revealing his plans for the next 12 months.
First, to win this election.
Announcing plans for a high-speed rail network between Melbourne and Brisbane, starting with a fast rail network between Sydney and Newcastle.
Creating jobs and connecting communities up and down the east coast of Australia.
Claiming a trip from Sydney to Newcastle would take just 2 hours on fast rail, on high-speed rail, just 45 minutes. But there are no details on when either option would be up and running or how much it will cost.
He needs to come clean with the Australian people. That's $200 to $300 billion on any credible estimate.
High-speed rail is often made as a pre-election promise, but to date, little progress has been made. But Anthony Albanese has vowed that under his government, work could finally begin. That's despite a previous feasibility study finding it would take 45 years to be completed.
You can take Labor's commitment to the bank.
Today's pitch to get voters on board in the hunter after significant swings against Labor at the last election.
For too long, this government has held our country back.
Hoping this slip of the tongue doesn't derail his message.
In 2002, the choice facing Australians is more clear than ever before.
Taylor Aiken, 7 News.
More than 1,300 new training places are now available to boost Victoria's early childhood workforce, including almost 800 spots for diploma-qualified graduates to complete their teaching degree.
It's only because of this program that I've been able to realise my dream, because I've been able to be paid while doing my qualification.
The move is designed to support the rollout of the state government's new 3-year-old kinder program, giving access to children across the state. A woman has been arrested after a fire broke out at a unit in Meadow Heights. Neighbours were evacuated as crews battled the flames around 9:30 last night. The building suffered major damage from the blaze, which is being treated as suspicious. The 27-year-old woman was taken to hospital. Prince Andrew is a step closer to facing his accuser after a court ruled Australian woman Virginia Giuffre's sexual assault case could be heard in the US. It's a new blow for the Duke's attempts to have the claims thrown out.
It's the courtroom clash Prince Andrew's lawyers have been working overtime to avoid. Today, it's looking increasingly like they've failed. A New York judge has denied their attempt to have sexual assault claims against the Prince thrown out. They had argued the US-based lawsuit could not be heard because his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, lives in Australia. Giuffre claims convicted sex offenders Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked her for sex with the Duke in 2001 at age 17. She also says she was abused by Epstein himself. The Prince has admitted he was good friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. He once invited the couple to the Queen's Balmoral estate. In 2019, Giuffre told the BBC Epstein took her to London where she was introduced to the Prince at a nightclub. She says the Duke asked her to dance.
And this guy was sweating all over me, like his sweat was like, it was raining.
This, the Royals' counterclaim.
I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time.
Giuffre's lawyers now want proof of his claimed medical condition. The Prince continues to strongly deny the abuse claim.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady.
Lawyers for Giuffre claim they have up to 6 witnesses that contradict the Prince's claim that he never met the then 17-year-old. The case is set to play out in court here in the next few days. In New York, Miley Hogan, 7 News.
South African freedom fighter Archbishop Desmond Tutu has been farewelled at a funeral in Cape Town. Described as the country's moral compass and a crusader for peace around the world, he died on Boxing Day, aged 90.
Carried by his grandchildren in a simple coffin made of the cheapest pine, this is the funeral Archbishop Desmond Tutu wanted. No lavish spending, he'd ordered. Instead, his family and South Africa's leaders lavished him with praise.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu has been our moral compass, but he's also been our national conscience.
Just 100 mourners were allowed in the Cape Town Cathedral due to COVID, a funeral service bathed in purple, the colour of his clerical robes that became the Nobel Prize winner's trademark. Tutu's widow was presented with the national flag, a symbol of the Archbishop's role in helping to form a new rainbow nation. Fighting white minority rule and helping to end apartheid. As Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town, he broke down barriers and spoke truth to power. If Nelson Mandela was the father of South African democracy, the current president said, Archbishop Tutu was the spiritual father of a new nation. Today, South Africa said thanks.
Udedi would say, the love the world has shown has warmed the cockles of our hearts. And he then would say, I don't know what a cockle is, but whatever it is, it has been warmed.
Archbishop Tutu considered the last of an era of South African freedom fighters. Many in this challenged nation now hoping his spirit will continue on. In London, Hugh Whitfeld, 7 News.
Novak Djokovic doesn't appear to have given up on his Australian Open dream as new vision emerged of the world number one practising with his brother in Spain. Tennis Australia boss Craig Tiley has revealed 2 independent panels will tick off on any application for a medical exemption. Djokovic is yet to reveal his vaccination status, but did withdraw from the ATP Cup in Sydney. Up next, shock new data on why the Aussie dream is slipping even further away from first home buyers. Plus, how Melbourne workers have built up record amounts of annual leave. Research from the US on why Omicron could bring an end to the pandemic. The moment a classic old ferry sank to the bottom of the ocean. And later, new technology helping fast-track recovery from a stroke. Crews remain on the scene in Maribyrnong tonight after more fire activity around the former army barracks. 80 firefighters battled the 5-acre blaze yesterday afternoon, which threatened nearby homes and destroyed empty buildings at the site. Investigators are yet to determine the cause. Breaking into Melbourne's property market is tougher than ever, according to new data. First-home buyers face more than a decade of saving, and that's just to rustle up enough for a deposit.
Affordability is falling. The gap between house prices and wages is growing, and first home buyers are bearing the brunt.
So in the last 10 years, it's at least doubled.
The latest housing affordability report has revealed it will take 14 years to save a deposit for a median-priced Melbourne home, almost double the time it took 15 years ago, with the cost of a typical home now more than 10 times higher than gross annual household incomes.
Selling! Sold! Congratulations! I think back to 10 years ago what prices were locally in this area. The median would have been less than $500,000.
For buyers hoping to snap up a property in Manningham West, it would take more than 20 years of saving, more than 18 in Bayside and Monash, while the Mornington Peninsula is slightly less at 16 years. If you want a home sooner, Brunswick and Coburg are among the most affordable, taking an average of 10 years to save for, or 9 years for Casey South. And if you're a first home buyer on a low income, it's even tougher. Just 10% of homes are within reach.
We're seeing a lot of first home buyers head towards the townhouse or the apartment avenue, and it's simply because they can't afford their house.
But in a sign of hope for would-be buyers, Melbourne property prices fell just below 1% in December, the first drop in 14 months.
A lot of people said they were going to wait and see what happens next year. If everybody waits, there's just more competition later.
Agents are pushing for urgent action, calling for stamp duty discount thresholds to be raised and new council laws to allow for out-of-box ideas like tiny homes. Rochelle Brown, 7 News.
Aussie workers banked up to a record 185 million days of annual leave last year. New data shows almost 1.4 million employees currently have at least 7 weeks in their holiday bank. COVID uncertainty and strict border rules are behind the ballooning leave, with many more people less inclined to take holidays in 2021. Multiple scientific papers are beginning to cast light on why the Omicron variant might cause milder disease than earlier COVID strains. The studies come, though, as the sheer numbers of cases cause alarm for disease specialists.
Joe Biden leaves a New Year's Day church service. The US president elected on a promise to turn around the pandemic, his second calendar year beginning with a burst of grim COVID forecasts.
Omicron is truly everywhere.
From America's leading disease experts.
We expect that in the next 3 to 4 weeks we're going to see everyone really hit with this.
Omicron's so transmissible, even those in lab coats are talking about the economic consequences.
What I am so worried about over the next month or so is that our economy is going to shut down.
We should anticipate huge delays and disruptions in that, all transportation hubs.
That's already happening in US airports. COVID-positive crews have grounded many thousands of flights in recent days. And yet new laboratory studies are also beginning to suggest why Omicron infections appear less severe than previous COVID variants, that they might be less harmful to the lungs. One biologist telling the New York Times the idea of Omicron being primarily in the upper respiratory system is emerging, promising, even as doctors are frightened by the scale of the new COVID surge.
The next month, 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks are going to be terrible. But there are a lot of signs that say that February might be okay and maybe even better than okay.
We'll have more variants. I'm actually convinced that we'll have more variants, but each of them will impact us less and less.
In the United States, Tim Lester, 7 News.
A part of Australian maritime history has been lost forever with the sinking of the last Sydney-built Manly ferry. The 99-year-old retired vessel began taking on water at its moorings last night.
The structure which has collapsed there was already collapsing, and so I basically watched, not being able to do anything, listening to the whole thing collapse and fall.
Transport New South Wales is now working on how to remove the sunken ferry from the water. The worst of our holiday heatwave is now behind us. Estelle Greepink is here. Hello, Estelle. Today was a little less oppressive.
Well, Jack, that dip in temperature made all the difference. And for the first time in 4 days, we only just hit the 30s. So today felt like the perfect weather to head down to the beach because it was that little bit cooler. Yesterday was actually our hottest New Year's Day in 14 years with that top of 37 degrees. But it does look like we won't see temperatures that warm for the rest of the week. We've actually got cooler weather heading our way with showers and even thunderstorms. I'll have the full forecast after sport. Zach?
OK, we'll see you then. Thank you, Estelle. Help is on the way for Victoria's under siege health system. Exclusive details are next on 7 News. Plus, terrified partygoers caught up in a bar inferno. What's behind the rise of popular fitness apps for pets? And a new technology helping fast-track recovery for stroke patients. Australian cricket has been rocked by claims of historic sex abuse. The AFP and Cricket Australia are reviewing the allegations of sexual assault involving an under-19s representative player in the 1980s. The organisation says it's cooperating with the police investigation. 10 new respiratory clinics are opening across the state, giving Victorians better access to vital health services. The $24 million investment is designed to take the pressure off our hospitals as the Omicron variant takes hold.
Touring a brand new respiratory clinic in Cranbourne, the Health Minister was asked the golden question.
It's a very challenging time and one day it will end and we get through it.
You have a crystal ball on that one?
I wish I did.
Until then, Victorians are going to need to keep getting tested. 20 respiratory clinics will help them access quick community-based care.
We can do COVID testing. Children or adults with respiratory symptoms, coughs and colds, we can safely assess them and treat them.
These clinics are the front line
in our battle against Omicron as it looms into January.
As daily cases increase, the clinics will take pressure off our city emergency departments.
To have these sort of services closer to home makes a difference, not just for all the community, but particularly when people are working, long hours, they've got young families to care for.
4 clinics have already opened in Glen Waverley, Cranbourne, Sunshine and Officer. Another 16 will be rolled out in areas including Hume, Greater Dandenong, Banyule and Boroondara. To ensure everyone in the community has access to the clinics, patients will be welcomed with or without a Medicare card.
Whether it's refugee communities, vulnerable communities, at-risk communities, anyone can front up and get the support they need, the early diagnosis, and if they do turn positive, the support to be cared for in their homes is so important.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
It's not only humans using the new year to focus on their health. Fitness trackers for pets are also rising in popularity.
If it's good for us, then maybe there'd be a pet alternative, pet tracker that I've got for my corgis. It will send me an alert and say, oh, you haven't walked your dog.
I need that. Most vets support the app trend, with around 5 million cats and dogs in Australia considered overweight or obese. Heavy rain is hammering parts of India. In Chennai, winds wreaked havoc, sending tents flying through the air. Much of the city is now flooded, with more wet weather on the way. A New Year's Eve celebration has turned to horror inside a New York bar. It was packed with partygoers when sparklers ignited the decorations, quickly turning the bar into a fireball. Police tried to put the blaze out with fire extinguishers, but they were of little use. And 21 people have been rescued after 2 cable cars got stuck in New Mexico. The wintry conditions caused a build-up of ice on the wires, bringing the capsules to a halt. The stranded riders were rappelled down to the ground after being trapped for more than 24 hours. A rehabilitation centre powered by robots is welcoming groundbreaking new devices to help stroke victims move again. It's now planning a national expansion to deal with soaring demand.
In 2016, Ilio Vigoli was walking his dog when his legs gave way, a small fall that turned out to be something far more sinister. He was suffering a stroke.
Over a month, I had about half a dozen mini strokes.
Leaving him struggling to walk, last year Elio turned to rehabilitation facility RoboFit.
My long-term goals, I had to walk. I reckon that's helping.
We've had spinal cord injury, stroke survivors come through, people with neurological disorders.
RoboFit exclusively imports state-of-the-art neurocontrolled devices from Japan, motivated by the co-founder's own journey to walk again. Daniel Hillier was diagnosed quadriplegic after a balcony collapse in 2010. His progress now coming along in leaps and bounds.
It's really, really exciting to see the progress that other people are gaining from this.
While the pandemic pushed pause on Elio's treatment, the centre made the most of the downtime.
During lockdown, we were busy getting some additional devices approved by TGA.
The new groundbreaking single limb and lumbar support technology helping stroke patients regain movement in their arms as well as their legs, also boasting abilities in falls prevention and lower back support.
The wearer's signals that are being sent from the brain are being picked up by the technology, and then where somebody has a weakness or a deficit, it's able to complement and perform and complete the action for them.
RoboFit is currently preparing to move into a bigger site in the Illawarra to accommodate the new devices and a rapidly growing client list, with plans also underway to expand to Queensland and Victoria later this year.
We'd love to see more clinics open up nationally and across New Zealand as well.
One step at a time. Amber Laidler, 7 News.
Up next, temperature sensors are looming as a game changer to keep construction workers on site over the next few months. Plus, the latest advice to help students thrive in the classroom. A high-flying war veteran's brave new campaign. And ice cream shop workers turn the chairs on an armed robber. The latest research has revealed students do better when they're given positive feedback if they make a mistake during exams. Data from Sydney University found students told to keep going instead of being told they are incorrect returned improvements in performance. Wearable technology has been put to the test in a bid to keep COVID out of Melbourne building sites. A new trial has found temperature sensors could be the quickest way to detect the virus and stop it from impacting workers.
The building industry is still reeling from Victoria's snap 2-week shutdown in September. It cost the sector $2 billion and left construction bosses desperate to keep the virus out of work sites.
We thought this technology could really provide some solutions going forward.
Building giants Kane and ProBuild helped trial a range of wearable temperature sensors as an alternative to manually checking staff on arrival. Workers were fitted with 4 different kinds of sensors, which were continuously monitored.
From the days that I've been wearing it, I cannot even notice the ring or the vest. So I guess we know that our temperature is being monitored, and you cannot even feel the measures.
The real-time monitoring system triggers an immediate red zone alert if an elevated temperature is detected, potentially saving hundreds of workers from exposure.
The results were really positive because we were able to show that they were very accurate, these devices were very safe, and they were also very comfortable.
And the building unions are interested to see the outcomes and the testing we're doing with the thermal devices. We're looking forward to seeing if this is a new technology we can take on.
Phase 2 of the trial will start next year, with workers monitored for fatigue and heat stress, 2 big causes of industrial accidents. It's hoped measuring heart rates could help determine rest times. In the future, technology playing a vital role when it comes to safety. Jackie Quist, 7 News.
The tables have turned on an armed robber who tried to hold up an ice cream parlour in Brazil. A worker took matters into his own hands, grabbing a chair and smashing it over his head. Other workers joined in, tackling the thief to the ground and holding him down until police arrived. A war veteran is flying high to help fellow soldiers. He's teaching them to skydive, and the unconventional therapy is helping in more ways than one. Our US correspondent, Ashley Mullaney, took the leap of faith to see how it works.
Plummeting from a plane at 200 kilometres an hour.
You get lost in that moment and you don't think about anything else.
There's little time to think, but plenty of adrenaline. And that's exactly why Dwayne McGahey got hooked on skydiving. Having lost a leg from an improvised explosive device in Iraq, he then spent over a decade battling the mental scars of war.
You can't really have emotions when it's life or death, and not everything's life and death, but the mindset, I think, was still there. And some people never reach out for help.
But when he did, it was fellow veteran Chris Durback who answered that call for help.
How you doing, man? Good to see you, buddy.
From airport hangars around the country, he's helping veterans like Dwayne overcome their trauma with some unconventional therapy.
In a lot of ways, it would be, hey, I'm going to give you this pill to do that, or, hey, you can try jumping out of a plane.
His program, Jump for Valor, helps veterans become certified skydivers, but it's more than a sport.
Flash forward a couple months later, they are actually going to see a counselor because they are now starting to feel more comfortable about talking to somebody on a more professional level.
For the veterans involved in this program, they may have hit rock bottom, but they find peace and a new sense of purpose at 12,000 feet. And I'm told you have to experience it to understand why.
That was terrifying and enthralling all at once. And I'm so happy I did it. Thank you.
Good. I'm happy you did it too.
After watching the chaos unfold at the end of the war in Afghanistan, Chris says the need for help has never been greater, and he hopes one day to take his program global.
We are all impacted in the exact same way, and I think that's something I would love to see happen in the future as well.
In Madisonville, Texas, Ashley Mullaney, 7 News.
Great story. There's more COVID curveballs in the England camp ahead of the Ashes. Up next, the length the Aussies are going to avoid a similar fate ahead of the 4th test. The local ring-ins called up for the Stars in a blast in the Big Bash. Man City stuns Arsenal as players are pelted with rubbish in the Premier League. And back-to-back buzzer beaters from a Chicago Bulls star. All-rounder Mitch Marsh and wicketkeeper Josh Inglis have spent the day driving from Melbourne to Sydney in a mercy dash to act as COVID cover for the fourth test. The Aussies have already lost Travis Head, while England's coaching staff have been all but wiped out by the virus.
Daily COVID tests in Australia's dressing room before practice. All those at the SCG today cleared.
Everyone's been negative, so I just had a lovely PCR test just then, which wasn't very pleasant.
Lyon and the likes of Mitch Starc drove in separate cars from Melbourne to Sydney, determined not to suffer the same fate as Travis Head, the only Australian so far to test positive.
That's the world we live in at the moment, so suck it up and get on with it.
Lyon tipping only one change, Head out, Usman Khawaja in.
In Shield cricket has been outstanding. I think he's up there with one of the leading run scorers. And to have Uzi on the bench, but the opportunity to come in this game, if the selectors go that way, I'm pretty sure they will.
While Head remains Australia's only COVID casualty for now, England has been decimated by the virus. COVID wiping out most coaching staff.
We bring a lot of support staff, and it's a shame that a few of them have gone down.
Even a mayday failed of former England one-day captain Adam Hollioake, declared a close contact.
It's not nice, but, you know, you take the highs with the lows.
A former Queensland batting coach, Hollioake could have provided crucial intel on Marnus Labuschagne and Khawaja.
I think there's always tactical improvements. We're always wise after the event, aren't we?
Zach Crawley confident he can turn cricket and COVID negatives into positives.
Because I know full well I can score 100 here this week, and that's what I'm looking to do.
With Pat Cummins and Starc full steam on home turf, the opener may be England's eternal optimist. Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
It had all the makings of a Hollywood movie as the COVID hit Melbourne stars were forced to call up local ring-ins just to field a side in today's Big Bash game. The replacements put up a fight but fell short against the Scorchers.
All systems go for the Stars after a mad scramble just to get today's game underway. 10 players out with COVID, only 7 available to choose from. 4 club cricketers called into the starting 11.
I'm pretty sure Glenn was looking around going, which one's which? He wasn't too sure, but he got it right.
There's a few guys I met just in the cricket nets before, so fair bit going on the last couple of days.
The crowd jammed in for the first men's BBL match at Junction Oval, treated to some early excitement. Local Carlton player Xavier Crone dealt a harsh lesson.
Launches down the ground. What a shot that is!
As the Scorchers had fun belting the Stars all over the ground. Crone thought he had his first wicket.
Short, little edge on it, that's taken and given.
But the umpire quickly changed his mind. Pakistan international Haris Ralph picked up 2 wickets in his return in green as Perth posted 180. Ringwood batter Tom Rogers given a chance to impress.
Well, he's got a feel for it now. 2 steps down the wing and bang!
Not overawed by the big stage.
Rogers wide.
Tommy!
Into Big Bash. Welcome to the big time, Tommy Rogers.
He played the perfect support role for Joe Clark.
That was nowhere near the pitch of it, but what a 50 that is from Clark.
A reverse sweep, the undoing for Rogers, gone for 32. It brought the skipper to the crease, but only briefly.
Yeah! Hatsoglu with the enormous wicket. Maxwell not happy.
Maxwell dismissed for 4, 3 for 95. The rescue job left to Hilton Cartwright, but it was a bridge too far. The Stars falling just short. Tim Hipsley, 7 News.
Tennis star Stefanos Tsitsipas is under an injury cloud ahead of the Australian Open. The world number 4 pulled out of his singles match in Greece's ATP Cup opener against Poland with an elbow complaint. With the tie already lost, Tsitsipas later took part in the doubles dead rubber, but says it's a little worrying.
I haven't been feeling 100% yet. As I said, it has been keeping me behind a little bit, and I'm trying to give it a bit more time.
Rising French tennis star Ugo Humbert dealt world number 2 Daniil Medvedev an early blow, winning in a third set tiebreak before France went down to Russia 2-1 in their ATP Cup tie. Aussie Jordan Thompson is relishing being back home after 10 months on last year's tour.
I did realise how hard it is, especially for Australians to be away all year, and I don't think many of the foreigners get that.
The world number 75 hit the courts at Melbourne Park, hoping he can advance to the third round of the Australian Open for the first time in his career. Angry Arsenal fans pelted rubbish at Manchester City players during a drama-charged Premier League clash. The reigning champions converted a penalty to level the scores before snatching an unlikely 2. Just yesterday, DeMar DeRozan sunk a game-winning buzzer beater, and incredibly, he did it again today.
2 seconds in the corner for 3, and the win again. He does it! Back-to-back games! Holy cow! DeMar DeRozan breaks the hearts of the Wizards.
The Bulls guard is the first player in NBA history to hit game-winning buzzer beaters in consecutive days. Meanwhile, Patty Mills hit 5 triples before being fouled out in Brooklyn's 4-point loss to the Clippers. The Aussie athlete affectionately known as Bobsled Bree has claimed another podium finish on the road to next month's Winter Olympics in Beijing. The former hurdler won silver in the monobob by the narrowest of margins at the World Series event in Latvia, despite a torrid final run.
No, she hangs on by 0.02 of a second, but that was a real horror story of a ride.
Action here, then you show it to us.
Yeah.
Oh, she's great. It's the 29-year-old's 4th podium of the season. The Winter Games are just over a month away. You'll, of course, see them live and free on 7. Estelle Greepink is next with the forecast. Hello, Estelle. All that heat is finally behind us.
Well, Jack, from days in the high 30s to rain and storms, Melbourne is keeping us on our toes. I'll have the details next. Hello again. We've had a lovely summer day to round out the first weekend of 2022. Luckily, the temperature was a little more bearable with that extreme heat now behind us. We only just hit 30 today after a stretch of dry, hot days. It was actually our coolest temperature in 4 days after 3 days of extreme heat. Yesterday on New Year's Day, some Melbourne suburbs hit 40 degrees. That drop in temperature meant outdoor activities were a little more appealing. This was Port Melbourne around midday. But further out in Portland, there were grey and gloomy clouds in the sky. And that's a taste of what's to come for us later this week. At the moment, a low pressure trough is hovering over our east. A high pressure system will develop south of the Bight tomorrow as the trough drifts back over central Victoria. In the days ahead, that means we'll see some pretty unstable weather, from cloudy and mild on Monday to hot and humid later in the week. And we'll need our umbrellas for rain, not shade, come Thursday and Friday. And tonight we do have a severe thunderstorm warning for parts of East Gippsland, with a humid northerly flow triggering damaging winds, hailstones and heavy rain. Around the nation tomorrow, mostly sunny in Sydney, hot but cloudy in Brisbane, blue skies in Adelaide and lots of sunshine for Perth. But in our state, cloud cover returns to our south and east. There could be thunderstorms over our north and west, but they'll produce little to no rainfall. Closer in, there'll be bursts of sunshine between all the cloud. Winds will be southerly and up to 30 kilometres per hour. In the city, we stay dry under partly cloudy skies, and there's not much of a difference between our minimum and maximum temperatures, a low of 16 and a top of just 22. And after several days of hot, dry heat, this week will turn humid. Tuesday's looking cloudy, a top of 24, and then the rain arrives just as the temperature rises. Up to 25 millimetres of rain on Wednesday with a possible thunderstorm, and then muggy and warm on Thursday, 28 degrees, but with showers increasing. The rain continues on Friday, another top of 28, but we begin to dry out by Saturday. Any rain or thunderstorm activity should be clear by the afternoon. So another soggy stretch of days, and Sunday gives us something to look forward to with a dry top of 23. But tomorrow we cool off from our heat wave after a stretch of sweltering days where mild and partly cloudy from a low of 16 will reach 22, Jack.
Sounds very nice indeed. Thank you, Estelle. And that is 7 News to Now. We'll have updates throughout the evening. But for now, from the team, good night.